rose by any other name would be
Hmm.
just as sweet. We have proudly taken responsibility for this being a whiskey distilled from rye mash. Between you and me and the nation,
Uh-huh.
this remains a rye whiskey,
Right.
right?
Yeah. So with that
Yes,
in mind, I mean, it's
yes.
quite clear we're not calling this rye whiskey.
We're
That's not what
not.
it says.
We're
It's
not.
whiskey distilled from. So talk to us.
So
And I'm gonna grab
legally
my
we
glass.
cannot. So we're very proud of the story here. So to tell you quickly, a few years ago, we purchased two 30-gallon casks from Catoctin Creek that was their spirit distilled without any cuts. There was no head, hearts, tails taken. It was a
Mhm.
single run, and they filled two 30-gallon casks. Only two casks that existed across the distillery. We bought
Yep.
them both.
Yep.
We poured those two 30-gallon casks into an ex Kilchoman XPX hogshead. We then took the two empty 30-gallon casks
Are people taking
and
notes? I
sorry?
hope people are I said I just hope people are taking notes here,
Yeah,
right?
there's
A
a
lot of ins and outs and what
diagram
have yous.
in the comments below. And I personally drove those two empty casks to Rocket Frog Brewing,
Mhm.
which was owned by a very dear Nation member, long term Nation member, David Hartogs, and
Mhm.
his brother in Sterling, Virginia.
Mhm.
And they used those two casks to finish off a stout and a barley wine. Once they were done finishing, I collected the two empty casks during a pandemic,
Mhm.
during a tail end. Oh, no, no, distilled October 2020. We were in the pandemic, my friend.
Yeah, yeah.
And all masked up, I collected the two empty casks. I took them back to Catoctin Creek and we filled new make spirit into them. And it was never our intention to have new charred oak be any part of this experience.
At all. Yep.
If we had finished for 30 minutes in new charred oak, we could have called this rye whiskey from Catoctin Creek. If we had
Mm.
carried this in a new charred bucket from a cask to a bottling unit, we could have called this rye whiskey, but we didn't want to. We wanted the experiment to be whiskey distilled from a rye mash, fully matured, in this instance, in an ex rye, ex barley wine cask. That was the goal here. And,
Ah.
and for 3 years, that's what we did. For 3 years of maturation at Catoctin Creek, this matured away. So another 30-gallon cask for us.
Yeah, and it's man, okay, so first off, first and foremost, the Catoctin Creek rye is right there, that beautiful, bright,
100%.
clean rye
100%.
characteristic, and it's 100% rye, right? They do is 100% rye,
Correct. Correct.
but, like, mingled with this is this sort of, like, warm toffee. It's almost like a Fifth Avenue bar or something
Mm.
like that, right? There's this sort of, like, warm raisins. For me, it's like warm raisins soaked for a little bit in rum. There's sort of that, like, alcohol heft behind it. Without it stinging your nose, just what alcohol
Yeah.
brings out from that sweet raisin.
Well, and I think one of the things we talk about is context, the
Yeah,
sitting with a sample,
yeah.
the letting the sample breathe, letting the sample oxidize, right? Turning it, bringing it to your nose, taking away, bringing it back. And for me, over time, I find the oak spice builds.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if
yep.
you pour this in 10 seconds at a festival and throw it over your throat, you'll miss it. You'll be on to the next thing. It'll be gone. Sitting with this and letting it come to you is vital. Absolutely vital. And again, I don't know if you said it a second ago, Joshua, but that that rye bread again, right? That nice
Yeah.
pleasing breadiness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost there's that rye bread, but there's a little bit of cinnamon going on there as well, right? It's that sweet cinnamon. I'm not talking like big red gum. I'm talking like
Yeah.
warm cinnamon, cinnamon toast crunch cinnamon, balancing out some of those rye bread kind of notes.
I believe in one instance you and I have very different palates. I do not enjoy barley wine as a standalone product, and I believe you do.
I almost dissolved the company because of this one.
As a standalone product for me, it's too much. It's too viscous. It's too heavy. Like it's
Yeah.
neither a beer nor a wine, nor a,
Mm.
it's not an easy product for my palate.
Yeah.
But
It's
I find
yeah.
in this use, I like the notes the barley wine delivers. I like the fruit from the barley wine. I like some of that heft as it works with a rye spirit. Those components are what makes me happy here. And to
Yeah.
me, I think
No.
the golden raisins that you were
Yeah.
just talking about, for me,
Yeah.
that's a barley wine note.
Mm.
Mm.
The palate. It's like now that rye spice comes through. Now I'm getting not applesauce, I'm getting apple pie. I'm getting like nutmeg and cinnamon and just, I mean, here we are celebrating, the spirit of America, the spirit of the nation, and I'm getting apple pie notes. Like, come on, it doesn't get any more American than that.
Roasted apples, buttery crust, baking
Yeah,
spices,
yeah,
like
yeah,
layers
spot
upon
on.
layers
Yeah.
here. Oh,
Mm.
I know again in the selection for this one where I talked about chocolate hazelnut spread from the co-op rather than the supermarket. And I loved the fact that you got what I meant by that immediately,
'Cause it's real, right? I mean,
right?
Nutella is wonderful.
It is. Gosh,
But
is it
when
ever.
you have that natural chocolate hazelnut spread that still has the grittiness to it, it's right, it's imitation flavors are one thing, real flavors are another, and that's what this is. It just it's authentic. I love it.
And I think the reduction in sugar, right? For me,
Yeah,
I think
yeah, yeah,
Nutella, I think
yeah,
sugary spread.
yeah.
That chocolate hazelnut spread from the co-op, that's your crunchy granola, belief system in place
Mhm.
right there.
Yeah,
Oh,
less sweet, right? It's more a focus on the chocolate and the hazelnut and less on the sugar, right?
correct.
That
100%.
richness. Yeah.
100%. As you go from the palate back to the nose,
Mm.
do you get some of that oak spice building on the nose as well as it's got that time to build?
Oh, for sure, right? And this is one of the things that I love about tasting whiskey, not drinking whiskey, but tasting
Mm.
whiskey when you're fully present and you're not just getting this scent and that smell and this flavor
Mm.
and that note. What you're getting is a building of it and an evolution of flavors and an evolution of scents. And you
Oh,
can't get that while drinking. You get that while tasting. And it's all right there, right?
it's another one of those moments for me. Little sips, pecking out notes,
Yeah.
big mouthful of it,
Yeah.
pow, right? Just kicks off, right? The baking spices associated with the apple pie, rich, full, really abundant. Could you turn the flavometer just as we're talking about spice here and
Yeah.
how
So
this balances as a whiskey for us?
So, as you were mentioning
Mm.
spice, I was
Oh,
getting fennel seed, right? I mean, amongst all of that apple pie and chocolate and cinnamon, then fennel seeds came through, right? And that delicate sort of licorice kind of note. Mm. Yeah, so here we go. So
that
again,
keeps
a,
going for me.
a bit sweeter, right? If those looking at our flavometer, it's a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being 0 basically, while 10 being 10. Um, And here we are with a 5 on the sweetness. So it's not overly sweet, but it's got a good sweet presence. But it's that richness, right? A 7 for richness. Where do you feel that's coming from, Jason? Is that the barley wine cask coming through? Is it grain?
I
Oh,
like it from the barley wine. Definitely those apple pie notes. However, I think when you then bring the spice, even the baking spices into it, you're talking cask, and I think you're talking the spirit, the
mm,
rye spirit from Catoctin Creek as well. I think it all comes together to present as a very rich profile here, but still with spice, and just like you and I were saying, right? The sweet gets a 5, but it's a natural sweetness. It's a
yeah,
broken down fruit sweetness.
yeah,
Oh gosh!
yeah. And
And
the
on
and
the
the
on the finish,
finish,
I'm still getting caramel. Right?
I'm getting caramel, but
Mm.
it's mixed with vanilla custard, right? It's almost like a flan kind of note coming through, and a little bit of that like whole wheat toast, a little spent coffee grounds, maybe even just freshly roasted. There's a
Yeah,
coffee note in there.
yeah, yeah.
Man,
One of the questions that I tend to get is, how does this differ from other Catoctin Creeks? And I
mm,
think in the other Catoctin Creeks, there's been this like a blackberry tea
for
drying note
sure. Yep.
that has gone through the finish. I do not get that note
No,
here.
no.
Also, the way you and I have talked about the apple presence here through nose finish and palate, I haven't had as much apple experience from previous Catoctin Creeks.
Isn't that
And I
interesting?
think I think this lives within the family and presents a different version. Presents a different side of that distillery.
So less berry fruit forward and more orchard fruit
I think so. Yeah, I
forward.
think it's a very
Oh, I
fair way
like
to
that.
say it.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. So
Oh,
there you go. It's
yeah, $95
$95.
a bottle. Um,
Who's gonna say it? You
um,
gonna say it? Am I gonna say it? Who's gonna say it?
we both said it. Everybody wins, and 118 bottles from the 30-gallon cask sitting in Virginia summers. So very low outturn. If you've followed the Catoctin Creek journey,
Mm.
please continue. Right, the spirit of collaboration sits right there proudly on this one. June 6th, noon Eastern. Josh has got a comment, a question, and we're out of here.
June 6th, noon Eastern, $95 a bottle. Well, we didn't mention what the ABV is.
Oh yeah, 56.8.
56.8%. And again, it doesn't drink that way. It gets back
He's
to
like a
what I was
champion.
saying earlier. Is we have a very specific thing that we do at Single Cast Nation. You can always count on us. We've said this from tasting to tasting, from podcast episode to podcast episode. We are texture guys, and the fact that this is so rich and viscous in character shows at 56.8. It just drinks like a charm. You don't expect that ABV.
Yep. Go seek it out. Grab one of 118 bottles. Well worth your time. Cheers.
Cheers.